I was old enough to remember the pub on the corner of Christchurch's Manchester and Cashel Streets when it was just the plain old McKendrys. McKendry was a real person, the publican between 1927 and 1940. Far from the first licensee, there was a pub on that corner for close to 130 years, till the earthquake of February 2011 extinguished its existence in less than 15 seconds. For much of that 100 years plus, you would term McKendrys as being a central city working men's pub, one that attracted a sporting crowd who sat around leaners and drank beer from jugs, in essence, men watching rugby, inflating their long-since extinguished sporting achievements ad infinitum. This reputation of being a rugby haunt for ageing blokes was cemented when ex-All Black and Canterbury rugby player Fergie McCormick took over as publican. McKendrys got a bit of a spruce over. That meant you got more than chips as a bar meal, and it was renamed the Cantabrian. Then in the early 90s, a new owner took over, a veteran of the Christchurch hospitality scene. Marty Fuller saw the days of middle-aged men reminiscing over a beer as a finite one. This was a prime site. He was going to revamp the Cantabrian. It was going to be rebranded, named after the sobriquet of its best-known publican, Jim Trader McKendry. That nickname was gained by his reputation, or the reputation of the establishment, being one where sly deals could be done, products traded with impunity. Gone were the leaners, the jugs, and Trader McKendrys was marketed towards a younger audience, one that wanted cheap alcohol, wouldn't be asleep by 10. Chicks were now not just tolerated, they were encouraged. Different cards began coming out of pockets and wallets. No longer the gold card by pensioners at the bar wanting a discount. Now car licences were being checked at the door for age. Fuller's plan was on the money. Trader McKendrys went gangbusters in the 90s. One of the places in central Christchurch for those under 30. Fuller kept the pedal to the floor with relentless promotions, like 2-for-1 nights. Then at the end of 1999, came up with what looked like a winner. He'd offer $500 in cash, $500 in the form of a bar tab, by running a competition called How Far Would You Go? Little did he know what this relatively harmless concept would morph into. How far Kiwis would go. Far enough for the winner, making it into newspapers around the world for all the wrong reasons. Now with a permanent listing in the Mammoth Book of Weird News. Public outrage, the police becoming involved, the pub being closed temporarily, and Fuller being fined. The rules were rather simple. You had 5 minutes to get up on their small stage, do something profoundly stupid and embarrassing in front of a group of drunken, guffawing strangers, judge and jury. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, I ask you? Nor was the pub short of punters wanting to embarrass themselves in public. So many, in fact, Trader McKendrys needed heats. The crowds loved it. Even before the infamous finals, there had been a glass of urine consumed, trumped by a glass of vomit. 2 females who went onto the stage in just their bras and knickers left with them under their armpits after putting on a lesbian scene which had to be pulled. Similarly dragged from the stage was a bloke who began masturbating. None of these acts would make the final. The signs for an eventful evening were rather ominous, to say the least. One of the leading contenders and a bit of a crowd favourite was a bloke who jabbed a safety pin through his scrotum. Observing his act was the Canterbury University student Thomas Hendry. He had won his heat, by getting hold of an industrial stapler and stapling his scrotum and foreskin to a piece of wood. But looking what his main competitor was up to, Mr. Safety Pin, the blood oozing from his scrotum, he realised he needed to up the ante. Rather than a plain old block of wood from the heats, a single staple, he had come armed with a more distinctive prop, a specially made white wooden pine crucifix. Now on stage, he proceeded to pound staple after staple through his scrotum onto the crucifix. You count, wince at the same time. "18 staples had him firmly attached, and by the way, it's okay to unfold your legs now, but only for a couple of ticks, because you see, that wasn't it. The highly intoxicated Hendry would create more macabre theatre. He went on to pour cigarette lighter fluid over his stapled penis and then set it alight. Fair to say the crowd went wild as the smoke set off the alarms. The management then rushed to extinguish the flames before the firemen came knocking, only to find the hotel's fire extinguishers were all empty, which also added to the black amusement, culminating in the pub-goers dousing the flames by covering his crotch with beer. A quiet night out. I'm sure you're asking what sort of person would see this as a good night's entertainment, a good night's out. Well, Hendry's mum, for one, his number one supporter. She was there to see her son triumph. The next day he trotted off, using a very wide hip action I might add, to the university's medical clinic to have his penis dressed. Did he have any regrets? Only that no one there, in the days before cell phones, had the sense to video his act. With all the media attention that event had now garnished, he figured rightly the photos and films would have greatly enhanced his winnings 50 times over. Still, the calls from Hollywood proved rather elusive. The prizes were, though, his. The $500 cash went on dealing with car issues and a vet bill for his dog. The bar tab he proceeded to eat, consumed $500 in meat pies and chips. Remember, he's a student. Then, as the events of the night became the subject of morning tea amusement, the public's interest was perked. His notoriety resulted in him reenacting the whole thing, yes, the whole thing, for a television comedy program, Havoc 2000 Deluxe, the things people do for their art. That episode drew literally hundreds of complaints of indecency. Those went to the New Zealand Broadcasting Standards Authority for their consideration. The struggling artist and the television company were exonerated. A strange decision, given Havoc 2000 Deluxe got their knuckles rapped shortly thereafter when one of the hosts offered a random woman $4 for a blowjob. The blowtorch was now firmly being directed at the owner of Trader McKendrys. He was in a bit of a pickle. You see, Marty Fuller just happened to also be the president of the local Canterbury Hospitality Association. Not a good look. Calls were made for him to lose his licence. To defuse the situation, Fuller resigned from his role. The police, they weren't finished with him. Trader McKendrys was forced to close for a week at the busiest time of the year, the week before Christmas, when everyone was letting their hair down. This story didn't end till 2006. The amusement was far from over. 7 years later, Thomas Hendry picked up the Darwin Award. Normally, this prestigious honour is bestowed upon those who have taken their own genes out of circulation in an act of stupidity. Posthumously, in other words. Hendry remains one of the select few who have won the Darwin Award and lived to place it on their mantelpiece. Or, when prospective employers reel in horror after Googling their name. Now a virtual poster boy for body modification, Hendry was chuffed. Where is Hendry today? Last heard of in Australia by all accounts. The pub, and changed its name to Shooters in 2003. Marty Fuller is still in the game. His current boozer has won the Best Local twice in the Lion Brewery's Hospitality Awards for Excellence. I should add, Lion Brewery sponsored the gig back in 1999 as well. Before you buzz off, please consider shouting me a beer, technically a coffee. This video will be demonetised. This content is way too risque for YouTube overlords, those that program the AI. Imagine German World War II Gestapo officers, except dressed in rainbow uniforms. Next episode will be another that will get a quarantine, another stage act in Christchurch. Where else? This time the major prop will be a coffin. That's got you thinking. A sex act. That's got you thinking even more. And the shooting of a jeweller to titillate you further. If you were impatient and can't wait a week, after more eccentric madness and along the same veins, try the mad world of Felix Tanner. Amongst a whole range of weird acts, complicity stunts, Tanner starved himself and charged the public money to watch him deteriorate. Then, in New Zealand, a Nelson planned to circumvent the globe in what was little more than a large wooden barrel. Spoiler alert, he didn't make it. Next, I can tempt you with balloonist Captain Charles Lorraine, plus his wife dragged in for good measure. This one's not recommended for those scared of heights. His remains are yet to be found. There you go. Go on. A couple more to entertain you. Links below on your screen if you are on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye for now.